Let's talk about why Hollywood is distancing itself from Mark Ruffalo. You know, the Hulk, the guy who smashes things in the MCU, fights Thor, throws down with Avengers, but off-screen? He's just as passionate about smashing through political barriers and speaking out for causes he believes in. But has his activism gone too far? Is his increasingly vocal stance on Palestine, climate change, and progressive politics actually alienating Hollywood studios and audiences? Is his outspokenness creating an invisible ceiling on his career? Is this costing him roles? Because that's the conspiracy theory floating around social media. People are saying he's getting blacklisted, that studios are quietly dropping him, that Disney's pulling back. But is any of that actually true? Or is this just another case of Hollywood paranoia? Today we're laying out all the evidence and the real receipts to figure out if Mark Ruffalo's convictions are genuinely costing him, or if he's actually found a way to be one of Hollywood's most outspoken voices and still book massive roles. Okay, before we dive into the activism controversy, we need to understand who Mark Ruffalo even is as an actor. Because context matters here. Mark Ruffalo didn't start as some A-list superhero. He was an indie darling. He came up doing character work in smaller films roles in Zodiac, Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, all these critically acclaimed indie and drama projects. He was respected, and he even got Oscar nominations. He was doing serious and character-driven work. Then Marvel came knocking in 2012. He joined the MCU as Bruce Banner, and suddenly his career trajectory changed completely. By 2019, he'd appeared in Avengers Endgame, which made $2.79 billion globally. Combined with Avengers Infinity War at $2.05 billion, those two films alone account for over $4.7 billion in his career box office. That's 40% of his entire career earnings. So we're talking about a guy who went from indie respectability to absolute MCU dominance. He became a household name. Kids dressed up as the Hulk for Halloween, and his net worth skyrocketed. But Mark Ruffalo wasn't some silent, apolitical actor grateful for the Marvel paycheck. Even before the big activism escalation, he had opinions. He was always a little bit of a vocal guy, just not in the way he is now. So let's talk about the activism timeline, because this is where the story gets interesting. In 2016, during the Democratic primary, Mark supported Bernie Sanders publicly. He was vocal about it. He wasn't shy. And then in 2017, he literally posted a petition on Twitter saying NBC should stop hiring white conservative commentators. He was already getting spicy about representation and politics, but that was relatively low-key. The real escalation happens post-2020, and especially starting in 2023 to 2024. In 2024, Mark became deeply involved with Artists for Ceasefire, which is a collective of entertainment industry folks pushing for an end to the Gaza conflict. He was vocal, and he called for a halt to US arms sales to Israel. He was specific about it. He said, "Our elected representatives must uphold existing US and international humanitarian regulations." He was grounded. He was citing law. He wasn't just yelling into the void, but then in 2024, he joined the Leave It Blank campaign in New York. This was a pro-Palestinian movement urging Democrats to leave their presidential primary ballots blank to protest Biden's Gaza policy. He posted this on X. So we're talking about him actively organizing against a sitting Democratic president on behalf of a cause he genuinely cares about. And then in September 2025, Ruffalo publicly signed a pledge with over 5,000 actors, directors, and filmmakers to boycott Israeli film institutions that they claim are implicated in genocide and apartheid against the Palestinian people. This wasn't anonymous. This was his name, right there on a public petition. By October 2025, he's on the record saying, and I'm quoting directly, that he's unafraid of facing professional consequences from pro-Israel groups and is committed to continuing his support for Palestine despite potential industry pressure. He even said speaking out for Palestine has cost him friendships. He stated that silence in the face of injustice is unacceptable. So we have a massive A-list actor, someone who makes Marvel movies, someone who's in the MCU very publicly taking stands that he himself acknowledges could damage his career, and he's saying he's willing to take that risk. The question is, has it actually happened? Is there real damage? Or is this perceived risk greater than the actual risk? Okay, so let's look at the actual evidence of whether his activism has hurt his career. And we do this by looking at his casting after his activism became intense, from 2016 onwards, right around when he's getting more vocal. Let's see what he's actually been offered. In 2017, Thor Ragnarok, which made $855.3 million worldwide. In 2018, Avengers Infinity War made $2.5 billion worldwide. In 2019, Avengers Endgame made $2.79 billion worldwide. In 2019, Dark Waters, which was a serious prestige drama about environmental activism and corporate corruption. This is a character film, not a blockbuster. And then we get into 2023 to 2025, which is when his activism really becomes militant. In 2023, Poor Things, an Emma Stone indie drama, for which he got an Oscar nomination for this role. And again in 2023, All the Light We Cannot See, Netflix prestige miniseries. And right now in 2025, he's in Mickey 17, directed by Bong Joon-ho, one of the best directors in the world. It opened with $19 million domestically, but that's not really on him because it's just a competitive market. But more importantly, HBO just gave him the lead role in Task, which premiered in September 2025 and scored an 89% on Rotten Tomatoes. This is a premium cable drama where he plays Tom Brandis, an FBI agent heading up a task force, created by the guy who made Mayor of Easttown, which won Emmys. This is serious prestige television. And coming up in 2026, he's confirmed to appear in Spider-Man Brand New Day, a major MCU-adjacent blockbuster as Bruce Banner the Hulk, in what reports describe as a substantial role, not a cameo. So where's the evidence of career damage? Where's the blacklisting? I'm looking at a guy who's been cast in prestige HBO series, who's getting Oscar-nominated indie films, who's still being brought into major MCU projects, while openly calling for boycotts of Israeli institutions. If studios were really punishing him, wouldn't we see fewer roles, lower budget projects, obvious marginalizing? Instead, what I see is consistent high-profile casting, premium television, and major studio backing. But here's where it gets complicated, because there is evidence of Hollywood doing exactly this kind of thing to other actors. And we have documented cases. Take Oscar winner Susan Sarandon. In November 2023, she attended a pro-Palestinian rally in New York. She made comments about anti-Semitism being confused with criticism of Israel. Nothing she said was factually incorrect or even extreme by normal activist standards. In result, United Talent Agency dropped her. Her agency, The People, who represent her professionally, cut her loose, and publicly she lost representation. And Melissa Barrera, the actress from the recent Scream films. She posted on Instagram about Gaza being treated like a concentration camp. She called the war genocide and ethnic cleansing. In result, Spyglass Media Group fired her from Scream 7, a major film franchise role gone because of her activism. So, Hollywood is doing this. There is professional retaliation happening, but Mark Ruffalo hasn't experienced this, at least not publicly. Now, there's a recent article from The Nation magazine from February 2025 that reports on whisper campaigns against pro-Palestinian actors. The headline is literally, "Backlash or Blacklist. Hollywood's pro-Gaza protesters feel the heat." It describes work drying up and puzzling career reversals for pro-Palestinian activists. But Mark Ruffalo isn't mentioned as one of the people facing these issues. And according to what I'm finding, that's deliberate. It's strategic. Here's what one Reddit user noted, and I think this is pretty insightful. They said, he used to be much more politically active pre-Marvel and was very vocally pro-Palestine over a decade ago. Then Marvel came and he got quieter for a little while, even being made to delete tweets he made, but it seems he's broken free of their shackles and is being allowed to be himself while keeping his job. And another comment I found said something really telling. He's definitely reached a level where his level of activism is expected, and Disney knows they can't do much because of how popular he is. So the theory isn't that Mark Ruffalo is being blacklisted. The theory is Mark Ruffalo has achieved enough power and cultural capital that he can get away with it in a way that other actors can't. And I think that's actually the most interesting finding here, because it reveals something about how Hollywood actually works versus how we think it works. There's this idea that there's some shadowy blacklist like the 1950s, Hollywood blacklist, where the government and studios colluded to ban leftists from working. And look, that did happen historically. It was real and brutal, but modern Hollywood isn't that organized. It's more diffuse. It's more about individual power dynamics. Here's what I think is actually going on. First, Mark Ruffalo is established, and he's not some emerging actor trying to break in. He's been in the 2 highest grossing films in cinematic history. He has leverage. When you have that much leverage, studios think twice before messing with you. Second, he's already proven his box office viability across multiple genres. He can do MCU blockbusters, he can do prestige indies, he can do HBO dramas, and he's not a one-note actor. So dropping him loses them options. Third, he's valuable to the progressive audience and progressive audiences in major cities. New York, LA, San Francisco, those are huge markets. Alienating him might actually hurt studios with their core audience. Fourth, by the time his activism really escalates in 2023 to 2024, he already has standing. The MCU is established, he's already made his money for Disney, and they can't retroactively uncast him from Endgame, so there's less immediate financial risk. Compare that to Susan Sarandon or Melissa Barrera. Sarandon is older and wasn't in as many current franchises. Barrera was newer, had less negotiating power. They were more replaceable. So the risk-benefit calculation was different. This isn't to say Mark Ruffalo hasn't faced any consequences. One Reddit thread mentioned that Marvel had made him delete tweets in the past, back before his power level was this high, so there was control being exerted. But as he's gotten more established, that control is loosened. Now it's almost like the higher you climb, the more freedom you actually get. Counterintuitive, but that's how power works in Hollywood. Now I do want to address something because there's been a ton of misinformation flying around on social media about Mark Ruffalo. In September 2025, rumors started circulating that Marvel had fired him and Disney was done with him. That his activism had finally crossed a line and they'd cut him loose. These rumors came from YouTube videos making wild claims, TikTok spreading the story, Twitter threads declaring he was blacklisted. People were posting with such confidence about his downfall. Nothing as such actually happened, and it was misinformation. Here's the reality. Mark Ruffalo still has confirmed roles coming up. Spider-Man Brand New Day in 2026, where he plays Bruce Banner in what's been described as a substantial role. That's post-activism confirmation. He's also expected to appear in future Avengers films based on concept art leaks. He made a joke on The Tonight Show about why Marvel kept him off the official cast list and said it's because
they decided that it was better to get rid of me than for me to tell the end of the next movie. All right, that makes sense.
Playing into the long-running joke about him spoiling Marvel plots in interviews. So there's no secret firing, and there's no quiet removal. There's just a guy continuing to book work while being outspoken about his beliefs. The most important thing to understand here, being vocal about politics doesn't automatically destroy your career in Hollywood. It can damage it. We've seen that with Sarandon and Barrera, but it's not guaranteed. It depends on your power level, your leverage, and when you build that leverage. Mark Ruffalo built his power first, then he became an activist. That order matters. So here's my actual take on all of this. Is Mark Ruffalo's activism hurting his Hollywood career? Not in any measurable way, based on the evidence I'm seeing. He's still getting cast, he's still in major projects, and studios are still investing in him. But the possibility of career damage is real enough that he's acknowledged it. He said he's willing to sacrifice his career for his principles, and that's a statement about where his priorities are. It's not a statement about what's actually happening, it's a statement about what he's willing to risk. And look, I think that actually makes him more credible as an activist, not less. It's easy to be political when it doesn't cost you anything. It's harder when you're putting your livelihood on the line, even if the threat is more perceived than real. What his career trajectory actually tells us is something bigger about Hollywood power dynamics. It tells us that if you have enough cultural capital and economic leverage, you can speak out on controversial issues and survive professionally. You can be Mark Ruffalo, MCU megastar, and vocal Palestine activist, and both of those things can be true simultaneously. But if you're Susan Sarandon, someone with less current franchise power, the calculation is different. And if you're Melissa Barrera, an emerging star who hasn't yet built that leverage, you're even more vulnerable. So the real question isn't whether activism hurts your Hollywood career in an absolute sense. The real question is, at what point in your career can you afford to be outspoken? And the answer seems to be, after you've already won. After you've already built your power base. Which is kind of a depressing takeaway about the entertainment industry, but it's also honest. Mark Ruffalo's career wasn't hurt by his activism, but that doesn't mean activism doesn't hurt careers. It just means you need to be already made before you're free to speak your mind. So that's the situation with Mark Ruffalo. It's complicated, it's nuanced. It's not the simple story of woke actor gets cancelled that a lot of people want to tell. It's actually a story about power, leverage, and the different rules that apply to different people in an industry. What do you think? Do you think Mark Ruffalo should be speaking out more or less? Is his activism authentically held, or is it performative? I want to know your take. Drop a comment below. And if you found this analysis useful, please hit that subscribe button. We do deep dives on entertainment industry stuff, Hollywood scandals, actor trivia, all that cinema stuff. Plus, if you subscribe, YouTube's algorithm will actually show my videos to people instead of burying them. So that'd be cool. Thanks for watching. My name is Lee, and I'll see you in the next one.